Hi everybody, Dr. Kevin Hyde here with Pinellas Anxiety Specialists. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about sleep, because sleep is something that we often neglect when we think about either our physical or mental health. We go to the doctor and the doctor tells us to eat healthier, to exercise, and a lot of times psychologists will say the same thing for your mental health. And one of the things we forget about is that getting enough sleep every night, getting between 7 to 9 hours, is really important for both of those. Because when we don't sleep enough, we tend to have more anxiety, we tend to get frustrated with others really quickly and kind of snap at them, which can affect our relationships. It increases the rates of death, causes things like higher rates of obesity. So not getting enough sleep just really has a lot of challenges and problems that come along with it. But really in American culture, it's almost a badge of honor to not get enough sleep. I remember back in graduate school, before we had big tests, we would brag about how little sleep we got because we were staying up all night studying. And we were in school learning about just how important sleep was for us, and yet here we were embodying American culture where we respect things like only getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep a night. Famously, people like Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, only gets 4 to 5 hours of sleep, and we figure if he can do that and lead Apple, one of the biggest companies in America, and he can be financially successful and do that, why shouldn't we be able to do that? We almost look at it as if we're sleeping, we're not working, and that's kind of un-American. So I wanted to talk about some ways that if you're not sleeping enough, if you are having problems either falling asleep or staying asleep, things you can look at and try and change to turn that around to get enough sleep, because there are just so many benefits that come with it. So the first thing that I wanted to mention was to try and improve your sleep hygiene. So a lot of people don't know what sleep hygiene is, but just like your personal hygiene is, showering and cleaning yourself, using deodorant, brushing your teeth, things like that sort of collectively improve your overall health. Sleep hygiene is a collection of smaller different things that you can do to improve your overall sleep health. So the first thing is that when people are not getting enough sleep, they tend to want to take naps. But really, when you're having sleep problems, taking naps can just make it worse, because if you're not tired at bedtime, then you're not going to be able to fall asleep very easily. So if you can, limit the amount of naps that you take. And if you do have to take a nap, try and keep it under 30 minutes and do it as early in the afternoon as possible so it's not getting close to bedtime. But overall, try and reduce the amount of naps. Something that might seem really obvious is caffeine. Caffeine is a stimulant. It keeps us awake. So if you are going to have caffeine, try and do it in the morning and not have any caffeine after about 2 p.m. And that can be different for individuals. I know for me, if I have caffeine after about noon or lunchtime, then I'm going to have a really hard time falling asleep, even if I'm trying to go to bed at 10 o'clock that night. So you can try things out with that, but really after 2 p.m., do not take caffeine if you can. In terms of what you do in bed, you want to limit it to things only sleep and sex. We don't want to be watching TV in bed. We don't want to be spending a lot of time reading in bed or eating food in bed, time on our phones. All things like that, they break the connection that our mind and our body has between bed and sleep. So you want to try and limit your bed activities, what you're actually doing while you're physically in bed. Your intake of water is something you want to watch. If you drink too much water, shortly before you go to bed, then you're going to have to wake up, one or more times in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. And a lot of times once you've woken up, it's really hard to get back to sleep, so try and limit your water that you take right before bed. Exercising is really good. Exercise, obviously, it expends energy, it tires us out more. So if you can exercise consistently, that's something that makes sleep easier. But of course, with that, you don't want to do intense exercise, probably about an hour before bedtime. That's just going to get the juices flowing and make it hard to fall asleep. So find a time that works for you, but consistent exercise is good. And also make sure that you have a consistent bedtime routine. So we really want our brain to know that we're getting ready for bed, right? We want it to start preparing our body and releasing the hormones that we need to help us fall asleep. And to do that, we want to have a consistent routine. So that can be different for everyone. It could be brushing your teeth, taking a shower, doing a little bit of light reading, and then turning off the light to try and fall asleep. But about an hour before bedtime, you really want to have some kind of a pretty consistent schedule. And going along with the schedule thing, having the same bedtime and wake time every day can be really helpful. And obviously things come up, we can't do this every single day, but as much as possible, even on weekends, trying to have the same bedtime is really helpful for trying to keep things consistent. Electronics, try and avoid the use of electronics for about an hour before you fall asleep, because they have what is called blue light, which sort of stimulates the brain to be awake. So we want to try and avoid anything like tablets, cell phones, television in the hour before we're ready to fall asleep. So probably the most common thing that people tell me when they're having sleep problems is that when they lay down in bed, their mind just starts to race. They think about all the crazy things that happened that day or to them in their past, or they're really focused on something that's coming up they're worried about. And having those racing thoughts, of course, makes it really hard to fall asleep. So for that, of course, while we can't necessarily promise that we can get rid of them entirely, a really easy trick that you can do is just have some sheets of paper next to your bed and just write down what's going on in your head. Those thoughts that are going through there. Because it's almost like Harry Potter, if you remember the pensieve, where they take the wand and they pull the dream out and put it into that cauldron. It almost works like that writing it down sort of takes it out of your head and puts it down on paper. So your mind knows that you're going to remember it in the morning. You can look at that sheet of paper and remember it and take care of whatever it is. Another thing that's very similar to that has a lot of research that shows it can help you fall asleep about 10 minutes faster is writing out a to-do list before you go to bed. So just taking 5 minutes to think about, what do you need to do over the next day? What do you need to take care of over the next week? And just putting that down on paper, because again, that frees up your mind so it doesn't need to try and remember that and doesn't need to run through it over and over and over in your head before you get there. And one of the things that can be helpful with those racing thoughts as well is a relaxation technique called mindfulness meditation. And now, mindfulness technically is not intended to specifically for relaxation, but that tends to be a side effect. So you can check out the blog that I did on mindfulness, which will go into more details, but just trying to take maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes if you can, and doing a guided meditation. And what that'll do is sort of slow you down, help keep you in the present moment and focus, and can help reduce some of those intrusive thoughts, or at least reduce the power that they have. So I encourage you to check out my other blog. Another relaxation technique that's really easy to do, that can kind of just help you wind down a little bit before falling asleep, is just a deep breathing exercise. So just taking about 5 to 10 very slow, deep breaths. And I also have another blog about that I've linked to. So check that out. And so meditation and deep breathing are just two relaxation techniques that can be done really easily that can help you fall asleep a little bit easier. Okay, so there you have some of the tips and tricks that I think are helpful for trying to get back on track. But those are probably most helpful if you have maybe a mild sleep problem or it hasn't been going on very long. But if you just for such a long time have had insomnia where you're not able to get enough sleep consistently, a lot of people turn to their medical doctor who gives them a sleep aid, a pill. And the problem with that is that pills aren't actually solving the sleep issue. It can help you in the short term, but what tends to happen is that you develop a dependence on that pill, and so you need that for as long as you want to get sleep. And so it's a process to try and get off the pill and do things yourself. So I'd recommend talking to your primary care doctor if you have been taking medication for sleep and would like to reduce your dependence on it. Because really the first line treatment that the American Academy of Family Physicians has recommended is actually therapy. It's cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Because those behavioral techniques, a lot of which I talked about earlier, they're just the most effective way to get back to having that natural, effective sleep. So I'd recommend that you talk to your medical doctor if you are on medication, and if you aren't on medication yet, but you're just so frustrated with your sleep problems, I'd recommend maybe contacting me or looking into a therapist that specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, because that's just the number one recommended way to get back the sleep that you've been losing. Hope that was helpful. Of course, I'd love you to reach out if you have any questions, concerns about anything. If you think that this could be helpful, if you want to maybe work with me, set up a free consultation. I'd love to chat with you and see what we can do for you and how we can help you take back control of your life. Thank you. Hope you guys have a wonderful day and a good night's sleep.